What was the message of the Lord against Baasha, king of Israel? This is the question we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 1 Kings on walking through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing 1 Kings chapter 16, verses 1 to 7. Before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, turn to 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 1. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 1 Kings chapter 16, beginning at verse 1. Then the word of the Lord came to Jehu the son of Hanani against Baasha, saying, Inasmuch as I lifted you out of the dust and made you ruler over my people, and you have walked in the ways of Jeroboam, and have made my people Israel to sin, to provoke me to anger with their sins, surely I will take the posterity of Baasha and the posterity of his house, and I will make your house like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat. The dog shall eat whoever belongs to Baasha and dies in the city, and the birds of the air shall eat whoever dies in the fields. Now the rest of the acts of Baasha, what he did and his might, are they not written in the books of the chronicles of the kings of Israel? So Baasha rested with his fathers and was buried in Tirzah. Then Elah his son reigned in his place. And also the word of the Lord came by the prophet Jehu the son of Hanani against Baasha and his house, because of all the evil that he did in the sight of the Lord, in provoking him to anger with the work of his hands, in being like the house of Jeroboam, and because he killed them. We have now returned to our discussion of the kings of Israel. Jeroboam, Israel's first king since the division, has now died, and Nadab his son reigned in his place. Nadab was just as evil as his father was, not moving away from the idolatry of his father that caused Israel to sin. Due to the sin of Jeroboam, God told Jeroboam that his house wouldn't continue on the throne of Israel, but his house would be put to death. The exact time frame of that prophecy wasn't given, but it happened shortly after the death of Jeroboam, for Nadab only reigned for 2 years over Israel, with part of those 2 years we determined likely being co-regnant with his father. Baasha of the house of Issachar killed Nadab in battle where Israel was fighting the Philistines, and then became king. He would reign for 24 years over Israel, but like his two predecessors, he too continued the idolatry of Israel that caused Israel to sin. By the end of Baasha's reign, we would be about 45 years since the division of Israel and Judah, and yet this sin of idolatry would persist. By this time, Judah had had a king, Asa, which was removing the idols from Judah and returning the nation to God, but Israel had no such man to do the job there. That is why, when we come to chapter 16, we have a new prophet, Jehu, the son of Hanani, coming to Baasha with the message from the Lord. That message was that because of his sin, which he continued in, the sin of idolatry, his house too would be removed by the Lord from ruling over Israel. Think about that. We haven't even got to half a century since the division, and we're going to be on our third dynasty in Israel, which will actually be many more than that, but we'll wait to cover that in future lessons. A political upheaval like this is not a show of strength for a nation and could lead other nations to come and attack it, which of course Ben-Hadad of Syria does towards the end of Baasha's reign. Moreover, God tells Baasha that like Jeroboam, his relatives will not go down to the grave in peace, but if they die in the city, their carcasses will be eaten by the wild dogs, and if they die in the country, their carcasses will be eaten by the birds. The political upheaval that followed Baasha would lead to this prophecy coming true. But there was another reason that Baasha's house would not continue, and that was because he killed Nadab, the son of Jeroboam. Now this might seem confusing, for God had prophesied that that would take place. But simply because something is prophesied or foretold does not mean that those who carry it out have pure motives and are held without sin. God prophesied the death of Jesus on the cross, yet the people who carried that out were still guilty of sin. With the Pharisees and Jewish council, they were guided by hate and envy, which caused them to lie about Jesus to Pilate, that ultimately led to Jesus' death. In those things, they sinned, even though God had prophesied of their actions. With Baasha, We're not told why he killed Nadab, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that it likely had to do with either envy or a lust for power on Baasha's part, which led him to conspire against the king. These things are sinful, and Baasha would be held accountable for them. Besides this prophecy, though, not much else is told to us in the book of 1 Kings about the reign of Baasha, save that which we discussed in chapter 15 concerning him and Asa. The rest of his actions were written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel. Again, this isn't our book of 1st and 2nd Chronicles, though he is mentioned in connection with Asa in 2nd Chronicles. It is another book available at the time when 1 Kings was written, but has now been lost to history. With the death of Baasha, Elah, his son, reigned in his place. This brings our timeline down to 885 BC. We'll discuss Elah's reign and the aftermath of it, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 1 Kings chapter 16, verses 8 to 20, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.